Hi guys, it's Sarah from Mayco, and today I'm going to be showing you some techniques and projects with our Melt Gloop line of glazes. So today we're going to go over how to intermix and marble the Melt Gloop. So this piece right here is what we're going to go over today for how to mix the colors of Melt Gloop in a glaze syringe and how to get this nice kind of marbled effect. And this piece here was two colors of Melt Gloop blended together and intermixed. So we're going to talk about both of these projects. So first we're going to intermix colors of Melt Gloop to get these marbled lines of Melt Gloop on our piece. And to do that, you're going to need glaze syringes. I'm just going to use one syringe for this and put all three colors in the same syringe so that way they blend together nicely on the final piece. So with Melt Gloop, again, these are much thicker than a traditional stoneware glaze, so I can tip this jar upside down, doesn't fall out of there. So you can't shake these to mix them as you would a typical stoneware glaze. So you want to use a stir stick or like the back end of your paintbrush to get these mixed. So I'm going to mix all these up and get them ready. To get this process started, I've mixed up all three jars of my Melt Gloop here. So for this piece, we're going to be using our hot pink Melt Gloop, our slime green Melt Gloop, and our yellow Melt Gloop. So depending on what color you want to start and end with, you can mix these colors however you would like, but I'm going to go in this order of yellow, green, pink for my piece. So to fill up your glaze syringe, you want to make sure that the plunger of your glaze syringe is pushed all the way down. And the tip here, you want to make sure is submerged beneath the top of whichever glaze you're filling with. So again, I'm going to start with yellow and put the tip of this below the glaze. And as I start to pull this plunger up, I'm going to create air down here in the glaze. So just to make sure I'm not sucking up a bunch of air in this glaze syringe, I'm going to move this around a little bit as I pull this up, just so I pick up more glaze and don't have a bunch of air pockets in here. So I'm going to start to fill this, but again, I want to marble these colors. So I'm only going to pick this up about a third of the way, and I'm going to scrape off the excess on the jar, and then I'm going to clean off the tip of this syringe really well with my towel here, so that way I'm not getting color that I don't want in my other jars. So I'm going to clean that tip off. And then I'm going to move this syringe to my next color, and I'm going to go ahead and use my pink, hot pink Melt Gloop. And again, I'm going to take the tip of this, submerge it in the glaze, move that around a little bit, and pull that another third of the way up. Clean that tip off, and clean that with my towel. And then I'm going to go into my last color, which is the slime green. So now I can go ahead and grab my bisque and we're going to start to apply the glaze. It's best when you're applying Melt Gloop on a piece, especially in this fashion, since we're going to create lines around the piece, that you work on a banding wheel so you don't have to touch the piece and you can just spin it freely on the banding wheel. So to start applying my Melt Gloop, I'm going to have to push down on the tip of the plunger here, and the glaze will start to come out of the glaze syringe. So I'm going to start from the top of my piece and slowly push down and start to turn my piece, and I'll just keep moving down the form while I'm pushing to release the glaze from the glaze syringe, and I can create these lines of Melt Gloop all the way down my piece. And you can make tighter lines or wider lines, gaps between, depending on the final look you want to achieve. If you run out of glaze in your glaze syringe, you just want to go back in and refill your syringe in the same manner we did before. I would recommend, however, that whatever color you end with is the color that you put in your glaze syringe last, so that way when you apply, you pick up where you left off in color. So since yellow is where I ended, I'm going to make sure that yellow is the last color I put in my syringe. So you can see this is where my last line of Melt Gloop is ending, and I'm going to pick up from here and just keep going down the piece. And so now that all of the milk gloop has been applied, I'm going to wait a little bit until this milk gloop starts to lose that glossy sheen. At that point, the glaze is dry enough that I can apply another stoneware glaze on top of this. I just don't want to wait so long to where this becomes fragile. So I'm going to wait just a minute or so for it to start to lose some of that sheen, and then I can apply milk glass on top of this. So now that the glaze has dried enough that I can touch this and it's not smearing, I'm ready to go ahead and add our top layer of glaze. So for this project, I'm going to be adding our milk glass glaze. I'm going to add 2 coats of this on top of the milk gloop. So you want to make sure that you shake your jar to get this mixed up. And I'm going to be applying this with a number 4 fan brush, and you want to get your brush really saturated with the glaze. And I'm going to apply this pretty thick because I want to make sure that the glaze gets in the crevice between where the milk gloop is and the bisque. So I'm going to really load my brush up and then just really lightly apply this, starting from the top and moving down the form. And you want to make sure that you're getting your brush underneath the drips of milk gloop or the lines of milk gloop, and also on top, so that way you're fully covering. Now I'll wait for this first layer of glaze to dry, and I'll apply my second coat. So that first layer of milk glass is pretty dry on here now. You can see it looks a little wet where the milk gloop is, but the milk gloop is going to retain moisture more so than milk glass. So I'm going to go ahead and apply my second coat of glaze now with milk glass, and that'll be our final coat of brush glaze. And again, you want to really make sure that you're filling in your milk glass brush glaze above and below these lines of milk gloop. If at any point when you're applying your brush glaze over top, if you start to notice the milk gloop smearing into your brush, just give your glaze a little bit, like maybe a minute or 2 longer to dry. That means that the milk gloop is getting a little too wet and it'll want to blend in with your top glaze. So once you finish up your second coat on here, you can go ahead and let this dry. As you're moving this to your kiln, you want to be really careful. Milk gloop can get a little fragile as it dries, so I would recommend firing this as soon as possible. Make sure you clean up any excess glaze from the bottom of your piece with a sponge, and I would also recommend anytime you're firing a piece with milk gloop, just in case you have any drip or fall off your piece, depending on how thick you layer it. I would recommend firing on soft brick. You can also fire on a slab of clay with a thick layer of kiln wash to protect your shelf, or you can also fire on a bed of silica sand, so that way you can safely pick up and remove your piece after it's fired. You may have to use a diamond sanding disc. Make sure you wear a respirator and goggles anytime you're sanding a piece, but that way you can get a smooth finish on the bottom of your piece after it's fired. And this is an example of what this piece will look like post-firing. And now I'm going to talk about intermixing gloop colors. So you can mix colors of milk gloop to get different variations of the colors. So this cup right here was a mixture of half and half blue milk gloop and hot pink milk gloop. So I'm going to intermix these colors to then apply to another piece so we can get this final look. And for this piece here, I have already pre-glazed the inside of the piece, and I did add an additional bit of the gloss glaze to the lip as well. So the inside of this piece is going to be our purple gloss glaze, and on the outside here, this is our wild violet underglaze, and the wild violet underglaze was bisqued on to this piece, so this piece was already fired to cone 04 with the underglaze, and then I had applied the liner glaze. And now we're going to get ready to apply the gloop. So to intermix these colors, I'm going to use a little 2-ounce cup just so that I can make sure I have enough to fill a glaze syringe. So anytime you're mixing colors of Melt Gloop, I would recommend mixing at least 2 ounces, if not more. That way you have enough to fill your applicator. And I'm gonna go ahead and scrape out roughly half and half of these colors to mix in this container. I'm just gonna use the back of my paintbrush. And now I'm just going to use the back of my paintbrush to mix those 2 colors, and I'm going to mix them until there's nothing showing of either pink or blue in the container. So how this is marbling right now, I want it to be one consistent color instead of seeing any of that marbling. All right, so now that that is pretty well mixed up, I'm going to grab my glaze syringe and we're going to fill this. So again, when you go to fill your glaze syringe, make sure that the plunger is pushed all the way down, and you want to submerge the tip of your syringe into the glaze, and then you're going to pull this plunger up and just move your syringe slightly so you're not trapping any air in there. And if you do fill any air, you can just push this down and then continue to fill. And then we are ready to apply this to our piece. And I'm again going to put this piece up on a banding wheel just so that it's easier to apply this. And so for this piece, I just did a dot design. Here on the handle, you can see it was applied in a kind of a domino cascade. And then around the connection points of the handle, I had layered lines of gloop. So we're going to do that as well, just so we can get a larger drip here. And then we're going to create this domino cascade of dots. And so I'm just going to start from the top of my piece and work my way down. And you want to remember to try to keep your dots roughly pea-sized or smaller. If they become too large, then that's when they will start to become drips instead of dots. And so now that I've applied that top line of dots, I'm going to start my next line of dots, and I'm going to apply them in between the space from what's above, so that way they can continue that domino-like cascade. And if at any point when you're applying Melt Gloop you have any sort of raised texture or like a spike that forms at the tip of your dots, don't worry about that. These will round out during the firing, so any texture you see on these dots right now won't be there post-firing. I'm going to apply a thicker line of gloop at the connection points of the handle, at the top and the bottom. And I'm just finishing up that final row of dots, and you can play around with however big or small you want these dots to be. And for this piece, I would still recommend firing on soft brick or a slab with kiln wash or a bed of silica sand, just in case you happen to lose any of these dots during the firing. If they're this size or smaller, they should stay in place, but just in case anything on the handle may drip and you want to protect your kiln shelves. And for this piece, we don't need to wipe the bottom because we don't have any glaze down there, but you want to just transport this as safely as possible because again, it will get fragile as it dries, and then go ahead and fire it. This result was fired to cone 6. And for this project, we do also have written directions that you can reference in case you want a more detailed explanation. You can also scan the QR code on the back of any of your Melt Gloop jars for additional tips and tricks on this product. And if you have any questions, please reach out to our Mayco technical team at technical@maycocolors.com. We're more than happy to help you, and we hope you have fun with the product and make it Mayco.